Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Dennis. So last week we did basically an unboxing and how the wiring all works for the AG620 BK, which just simply stands for the Black Edition version, as there is a white as well. This week we're going to do the actual install. We're going to do the temps from the stock cooler. It's going to be an Intel install. I showed you the AMD, everything we'd used from that from the last video. This is going to be Intel. I'm going to show you everything you're going to need. We're going to do the install. We'll do some temperatures checks first on the system to see what the stock cooler is providing on idle, and then we'll do one stress test. I'll just quickly cut to the end of that and show it to you. Then we'll move on with the install. Then after we're done, we'll do another temp test just to see what it's at and see if there's a difference. Hopefully there is. I would expect that there would be one. If there's not, I'd be very surprised. And then that'll be it. So let's get started. So this is HWInfo64. The CPU package is, now this is everything on idle. There's nothing running in the background, and it's sitting at 45 up to 47 degrees. That's a bit hot considering it's sitting in idle. All right, so CPU cooler going on this is definitely going to be necessary, and I expect it will help a tremendous difference. But since I do want to record and see what happens under 100% stress, I'm using AIDA64 Extreme, the trial version. I'm going to run it for at least 5 minutes, and I want to see what the temperatures get to, because over here it's about 43 degrees. It's basically, it says 0 to 15%. Actually, that's 1%. So we're going to start it up, get it to 100%, and we'll come back once it's all ready and I can show it to you. So there you go, it's 100% utilization. We'll come back in a little bit. Look, it's jumped way up already. That's crazy to me. So a very inefficient stock cooler from Intel. So I'll come back in a bit, show you what this is. But in the meantime, let's show you the CPU that I'm testing. It is the i7-13700F running in this system. All right, so it's running in here. So the fact that it's that hot, that quick, that's not really good. So we definitely have to change out the stock cooler because it's obviously not doing its job. Now, this is definitely, what does it say? CPU throttling 14%, overheating detected. That's pretty telling of how bad that's working. This is probably the first one I've actually seen that happen, where it's just off the charts high. I mean, we're only a minute in, so I'm not even going to wait the 10 minutes or even 5 minutes, because it's really not going to change much. In fact, if anything, it's going to go higher or maybe even shut the system down. Wow, I am quite surprised, to be honest. So let's get right on with the installation and go from there. So for those of you that didn't watch the previous video and you're just stumbling upon this with a Google search or whatever, I'll quickly go over it. You have two fans in addition to the CPU itself, CPU cooler rather. You have a CPU or a fan splitter rather, to connect your two fans, and you have disconnects for your addressable RGB, so that you can connect everything together, and that way you only need one connector that goes to your motherboard. I'll show you that as we do it. We will probably have to remove the fans to install it, so that's not really a big deal. You can see how they're fastened on here, okay? And when you go to put it back on, you'll be putting them in these same slots just by pulling your fan brackets back here, okay? But the important part is, what do you need for an Intel install? So of course you've got your backplate here, and I installed this one on here so you can see it. So you've got 4 of these, and it just basically goes on here, okay? That's just to show you where it goes, but we're not going to do that yet, because these have to be on after you put it on your system. All right, that's just to show you what it's going to look like. All right, then once that's on here, okay, so this is our bracket that's going to go on the back of the motherboard. All right. Then you're going to put these on there, okay, to secure it in place, which we'll do when we do the install. You're going to have to put these on the motherboard. I'll show you that during the install. And of course, you're going to use these to fasten everything down. And you want that part, okay, the part that's there, see how it's shaped? So your screwdriver can fasten it down. All right. So let's take the system apart, put the back plate on, secure it, and of course we'll do all the removal, the stock cooler and all that, and we'll show you all this as we go along. Okay, so taking the stock cooler off is pretty easy. Okay, you have 4 screws here, you have to undo, and that's pretty much it. Now, the way this is designed, I have to use a flat screwdriver, turn that. It doesn't fit in there very well, but anyway, take these 4 screws out. This is going to pop out, and then we'll start with the install. Okay, so it's been quite a while since I've worked with Intel, so I'm going to unscrew that. These are going to pop out, and the whole thing's going to lift off. When I go to put the other one on, however, those holes, that's where this is going to go. Okay, it's going to fit right over top. Don't worry about this. Nothing to worry about there. So yeah, I'm just going to turn it around and take that apart. So we're just going to get on here, unscrew that, and it should just come right off. Okay, flat screwdriver, just put it in there. You'll hear it release. Same thing with this one down here. You can actually feel it pulling off. So this is going to be a little easier. I already did that one. And I think I have this one left. Yeah. Okay, that was all there was. So anyhow, I'm just going to take that really gently. It should pull off. I have to pull this. Sometimes you have to pull because they're pushed in order to hold them in place. And you just pull them out. And that's all there is to it. All right. The coverage is really good, but it just doesn't work very well. So pull out your CPU power cable, okay, from the header up there. We're going to clean this off, and then we're going to mount our back plate on the back and secure it the way I showed earlier. So we're going to go to that next. Okay, so we got our back plate, we have our holes, and I'm actually going to do this before I clean off the thermal paste. It's just as easy. So one thing you will need to do is there's different settings for where you have to go. For the 1700, it's all the way up. Okay, so just make sure they're all the way to there, and that will let you line up your holes, get it in there, and you're good to go. So let's turn this around, and now what I can do, I can take my little pieces here and just fasten them on, just to secure it. All right. And believe it or not, one is probably all you need to secure it on there. I'm going to do all 4. So rinse and repeat to each place as it's on here. Make sure you get it in there good and tight. It's kind of hard with the way this motherboard is to get in there and tighten it, but I'll get her. So if you have a motherboard like mine where you have all these, it's going to make it a little bit more tricky to get those all in there, but at least you can do it. And it's really not going to interfere with us taking the thermal paste off. So like I say, you can just go ahead and do it. And make sure you tighten it as basically finger tight as best you can get it. And do that to all 4 of them. Make sure they're on there really good. And then after you've done that, then we're going to start putting everything else on. Starting with our brackets. Alright, so our brackets, let me just turn this. So now that we've fastened these all down, we have to line these up. You have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, they all mean something different. Okay, so you're going to make sure after you get it on there, before you put your CPU cooler on, that's in the right position. So for the 1700, let's look it up and see what it is, and then we'll come back. So for the 1700, it's going to be number 2. So as long as you got that on there, you're good. All right. So again, put that on here, get it on there, but I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to get my thermal paste off of there because we're going to have to reapply it and everything. But basically, it's basically in the center. All right. So we will adjust that once I lay it back down. But that's basically what it's going to look like. Okay. So before I do this though, time to clean this off. Okay, so something I noticed is I had the brackets on the wrong way. So I had them facing that way, and these 2 points have to face in, and I'm going to have to turn this one around as well. So they both point toward each other. So these points coming this way, and that one going that way. Otherwise, it doesn't fit on these screws properly. So I'm going to take that off, turn them around. I've already done this one. I just got to fasten it back on, and then we're ready to apply thermal paste and continue on. Okay, so I've got this pointing this way, and this one's pointing that way. So I did a quick check, and it does fit on there properly now. So, yeah, at least I figured it out before I tried to put the thermal paste on, which would have been disastrous. Well, okay, it's not disastrous, but it's a pain in the derriere, if you will. So put some thermal paste on here now. And it depends on how you want to do it. Some people like to do it this way. Some people say it's too much. All depends. But I started doing it in a completely different way. I've seen only one other person do this, and it always works for them. Kerry Holzman, that's one person I've always watched. And he spreads this on. And I have a thing to spread it on, so I'm going to do that. That way I know I'm getting a proper spread across the entire CPU before I put my CPU cooler on, which should result in better temperatures. So I'm going to go do that. I'm going to put that on there, and then I'll come back once it's all spread out. Okay, so I've got the thermal paste on here. These are in the right place. Make sure you take this off so you thermal paste makes a good contact. Okay, there's a thing on there you have to peel off. Line these up over top of those, and then you're going to be able to take your screws and fasten them down. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I have to line those up. Okay, so once you get them lined up, take your screws and tighten them on. Now hopefully this will reach. If it doesn't, it does. So if it doesn't, I had a longer screwdriver, which works pretty amazing actually. Should almost go get it. But it is wide enough to get it in here, so shouldn't be a problem. If I can get it down there. There we go. So just get it started and then move on to the other side. Go back and forth. Okay, because you want to make sure that it's even distribution. Okay, you'll feel it tightening up, and just continue that until it's down there good and snug. Okay, it'll stop once it's good, and then you're good to go. So the only thing left now, put our fan in the middle, put a fan on this side back on, and then we're going to plug everything in. Okay, so our CPU cooler is installed. Fastened on those screws. I put this fan in here. I'm struggling with this fan simply because my RAM is high, so it's too tight in here. I tried switching it, it didn't make much difference. But the biggest thing I struggle with is these cables. Alright, I know they all go together and only one of them needs to plug into the motherboard, but no matter how I try and do it, it's gonna be a mess. So anyway, short story. This is going to plug into the addressable RGB, or if there's one on the bottom, which might be an option down here, I could plug it in down the bottom. But then the fan, I think that makes it even worse, to be honest. Yeah, regardless, plug it into your addressable RGB. Alright, either here or down there. The fans go on a splitter, and then plug that into the motherboard, and then that'll help you do everything. Now, I did take out the graphics card temporarily to kind of get in here and work around a little bit more. But now it's just a matter of connecting all these into the right places and going from there. So I actually may put it down here. I think that by the time I put it down there, tie it up, the gravity square will hide it and it'll look better. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll come back and then we'll have a quick look and see what it looks like and fire it up and do all the temps and everything like that. Okay, so one more thing I want to point out is your other fan. Okay, so your fan, not the RGB down here. I did plug it in the bottom, by the way. It's going to plug in. So 4W PWM fan, I mean, look on you see the gray one? Okay, the one on the left. That's the one you're going to plug this into. Line up your tabs, plug it in, and you're good to go. It's going to be hard for me to show you that on here, but it's basically going to go in like this into the gray, where's this CPU fan, to power it. Other than having plugged it in, other than plugging in down below. Like I say, I'm going to twist tie this, pop it up, you know, the graphics card will kind of hide the cables, and it'll look fine. I'm sure there's got to be a better way of doing this, but not sure what I'm doing wrong here, but anyhow, that's the gist of it. It's all going to work. It's all going to plug in. We'll be back in a moment. So the fans are spinning. RGB is on. You can barely see it through here, but you can at least see it. I had to bring this one out just a little bit because I have a little bit high RAM, and yeah. But the good news is RGB's all been recognized. Everything is going great. So at least that's good. But what are the temps? So let's go back in. We'll do HWInfo first, and then we'll do the AIDA64 Extreme and see what kind of temps we're getting now. Now, in fairness to the stock cooler, apparently 97 degrees is apparently in the normal range, up to 100, which I didn't know. But, I mean, I don't want mine running all the time like that. And it's not going to, with your stress testing, you're always going to get higher than, well, you're going to get gaming or anything else. So just be aware of that. So let's have a look at the temperatures in those two programs and see what we're getting now. So here you can see the temperatures. So the core temperature is at 30 degrees. That's 17-degree difference in what it was till what it is now. All right. I mean, that's a big difference. Okay, so when you can get 17 degrees as a difference in your overall CPU temperatures, how can you really complain about that? And when you look at the CPU package there down below, it's 35 is the max that it's been getting to. Apparently it hit a max of 39 at one point. That's probably when I did the stress test. And everything else is running pretty good. You can see everything in there. Now let's go to AIDA64 Extreme and see what we get. And I'm just going to start it up, have a quick look at it. I'll let it run for a little bit and see what we get to. So here we are, AIDA64 Extreme. I haven't started anything yet, but just sitting at idle, it's around 32, it looks like right there. And it says CPU throttling, but there's actually very little throttling, down to 0, 1, 2%, so that's not too bad. I think if, given how hot the CPU can get, maybe the only recourse might be to actually do water cooling. But for now, this is okay. So let's start it up and see what happens. So we're going to jump right up to 100% of utilization on the CPU. And we're jumped up to 90. I don't expect it'll stay there, but if it does, that's still better than the 97 it jumped to immediately and then like stayed there and actually went beyond. So you can see it settled down. It's now at 77 to 78. It's jumping back and forth. So we'll come back in a little bit. We are still getting a little bit of CPU throttling, but it's much, much lower than it was before. In fact, it actually says 0%. So anyhow, we know it's happening. So that is going to cut your performance a little bit. Let's come back in about 5 minutes and see where we're at. Okay, so we're back. It's just a little over 5 minutes. We're getting anywhere up to 93, even 97 a little bit. It does seem to be getting a little bit of over throttling, but nothing is compared with before. This is 6%. Before it was 14. So the differences in temperature are definitely noticeable. Again, you're stress testing the CPU right now, along with the FPU, system cache, and memory. So it's all being stressed at the same time. So if I was to take a couple of those things off, maybe it would make a difference. I don't know if it would, but you can see it is definitely moving up. I think I just hit 100 there actually, but they're saying 100 is normal. But obviously we don't want that. We were way over 100 before. It was like 107 and I only just started it. So who knows what it would have got over time. So almost 6 minutes. Everything seems to be working fine. The fan noise isn't too bad. I'll stand close to it so you can hear that. All right, that's not too bad. So I want to give you a little bit of specs on this, just to go back to the CPU cooler itself. And also the when the fans kick on, because it does seem to ramp up a little bit more. And I'm at default settings. I haven't cranked up the fan speed or anything like that. So that may have an impact on it as well. So like I say, let's get back to some of the specs for the CPU cooler. First, we're going to start with socket compatibility. Okay, for Intel, you can go up to LGA 2066/2011-version 3 of 2011. You can go anywhere from the 1150 series up to the 1700, including the 1200 and the 1150 series. For AMD, you can do AM4 and AM5. So product dimensions, it's 129 by 136 by 157 millimeters. Heatsink is 127 by 110 by 157 millimeters. The weight is 1,300 grams, and actually it feels very light. Heat pipe, you can see there's 6 millimeters. Fan dimensions are 120 millimeter fans by 25, so 121 by 120 by 125. Fan speed goes from 300 up to 1850 with a plus or minus of 10%. The airflow is 67.88 CFM. Air pressure 2.04 mmHg. Fan noise, well, you just heard it, but it says 29.4 decibels. Fan connector, like I showed you earlier, was 4-pin PWM. The bearing type is hydro bearing with a 12-volt VDC current. Fan rated is 0.14 amps. Power consumption 1.68 watts. And of course it has addressable RGB LED for the type. Connector is 3-pin 5-volt. And the LED rated voltage is the 5-volt DC. And the LED power consumption is 1.05 watts. That pretty much is it. So that pretty much covers everything you're going to need to know about this fan. Alright, so that's the AG620 BK. Also comes in WH, which is the white version. And there's a single fan as well. I didn't see that one anywhere, but apparently it exists. It goes great with the RGB colors. Makes the case look even that much better than it did before. I'm surprised that they say that the normal temperature of this CPU is 100 degrees. It's kind of like AMD's AM5 that gets up so high. But on the stress test, you saw how high it got. It was certainly better than in the beginning of the stock cooler. So, you know, it dropped about 17 degrees in difference in temperature. So that should prove valuable, especially in a gaming session. So when you're gaming, when you're doing everyday tasks, you're not going to go a whole lot above that idle temperature. So you're still going to have lots of room for spread, and long gaming sessions will heat it up, of course, but it's still not going to cause you any kind of grief. It's still going to be well within any kind of limits that you're going to worry about. So don't worry. It's good to go. And for the price of this, I think it was like 35 bucks. I might have been wrong on that. Could be a little bit more, but that's pretty good price for considering what it's able to do. Obviously, water cooling probably would work a little bit better than that. I don't know how much. Maybe I'll try that maybe in another video. We'll see. Who's to say? Anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. If you're new here, think about subscribing. Hit that like, because it helps me out. Helps me get more views, which is kind of dropping off. And the bell for notifications, if you want to see them in the future as videos come up. And if you want to see more on my 3D printer, if you want to see anything on like that, on what I'm doing and all this kind of stuff, let me know and I'll see what I can get for you. And appreciate you watching. And if you have any comments or questions, put them down below, and I will certainly get back to you. Hope I help somebody out. Hope the install is good enough for y'all. And yeah, we'll take care and see you in the future. Maybe. Hopefully. Come back. Please. All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.